All right, everybody, welcome. Hey, so excited you guys are all here. I think I know most of you, but my name is Drew Stedman. I'm the U.S. Director. And welcome to the Antioch Leadership Track. And for those of you we got a lot of fresh faces here in the room in Waco, but this is a program that we have that is designed to help equip and train our next generation of U.S. church planters. And we have today, we're being streamed at multiple ones of our different churches around the country. We use this as a resource, but we also thought, based on who we had coming in, we've opened it up to many of our staff and leaders here in Waco as well. I think it's going to be a really great session this morning. And so we're glad you guys are all here. A couple of housekeeping things before I introduce Tyler. First and foremost, for those of you who are in the leadership track, you should be getting an email about a retreat that we're planning in March or April, so make sure you're getting back in touch with Travis about that. As well as for December, we don't actually have a class session, and instead what I'm going to be doing or your pastor is going to be doing is having a meeting with you, just kind of talking through how you're doing at the first 4-month or first semester mark, how the track's going and what God's speaking to you. So there's no class in December. We normally meet the last Thursday of the month. Instead, we're going to be doing just personal follow-ups with each person. Sound good? Well, hey, I'm super excited this morning to introduce Tyler Hardy. Even though he's an Aggie, we still love him. And let me say this. We said at the beginning of the leadership track, there's several different places of equipping that we're wanting to do. So how do you preach? And you should have heard from Carl about that. We're talking about how do you disciple a culture? How do you lead a team? How do you lead a vision? How do you provide pastoral care? And that's what these sessions are about. And today we're talking about how do you develop leaders? And I've been to multiple ones of our churches, and I constantly hear people tell me the same thing, that if you can get someone from Antioch College Station, they're incredible leaders. There's this reputation across our movement, both internationally and stateside, where people are calling Tyler's church trying to get his leaders because of the culture they've created of developing leaders. So I called him and said, hey, will you come up and teach on this? I really think it's an anointing and strength on Tyler as well as on their church, and I want that to be imparted to the rest of us. Does that sound good? All right, so Tyler, come on up. We're going to pray for you, and then we'll let you take it away. All right, Jesus, I pray this morning that you'd move, that you'd speak, and God, we're just so grateful for what you're doing at Antioch College Station, and God, I pray that whatever grace you've given them, that you'd impart that to us today as we're both in ministry, and then many of us are going to launch out and start new churches. God, we want to see that. We want to see generations of... What on earth is that? Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Lord.
I think for the stream people, you just missed an incredible moment. I'm sorry about that.
Yes, it's incredible. Thank you, Blake. Didn't know you're the in-house virus guy. Well, hey, guys, good morning. And I know some of you, I don't know others of you, and just glad to be here. And so as Drew said, my name is Tyler Hardy, and I'll give you just a brief backstory so you kind of know where I'm coming from. I went to Texas A&M 2001, 2005, and was never planning on making a trip to Waco, Texas. And I had a friend from high school that actually went to college at Baylor, and I went to go visit him on Martin Luther King weekend. And next thing you know, I met an amazing woman named Ashley, and she was going to Antioch. She was a Baylor Bear, and usually we tend to stay away from them, but I decided to go up north and snag my bride. So we met on a weekend, dated for a year, then were engaged for a year, got married, and said, we can move wherever we want to in the world. Where do we want to go? And we really felt like God was doing something here in Waco at this church, and so gave up other job opportunities and moved to Waco. Not to be on staff, not even do ministry, but just to come and live here, to be amongst the people that were pursuing God. And I tell you that because I want you to know that our story started, this whole journey, it started with just us saying, look, we're going to be in business, we're going to be in the marketplace, but we want to go where God is. And God is all over the earth, but he's moving in ways in different places. And I think it's important for us to tell people, hey, we want you to make decisions in life not just based off of career, not just based off of family, but based off of what is God saying. And we felt like God was saying, go to Waco, Texas and figure it out. I actually remember the very first dinner we had with people. We were trying to invite people over. And my wife just had a bunch of girls she knew, and all of her guy friends, or all of them, they had moved on. And so I remember having this dinner at our little duplex in Robinson, Texas. It was me, my wife, and 5 girls. And it was the most awkward dinner I've ever had, all right? I'm there talking, interacting. I'm new to this whole scene, and it was awkward. But that was our start. And we said, okay, this is where we're going to live. A little bit of our story, too, just to share with you is, we had moved here, and we got involved into a young adult life group at the time. And as we were involved, we decided, hey, we really wanted to apply for ADS. And so we applied for the discipleship school at the time, and we were super excited about it and telling our families and telling our friends, and we really want to do this school, and we just want more of God. That was the premise. It wasn't, we're ready to go into ministry, we want to do church planting. We actually just said, we just want more of God, we want more of Jesus, and you know what? We don't have kids yet, and so we can give a year of our lives just to go deeper. And so we applied, and we were so excited, and then this guy named John Atkinson, you may know John, he came over to our house, and we were like, oh, cool, this is like the welcoming thing. Like, hey, so glad you're in ADS, we're excited to invite you in. And instead what happened was, he said, hey, I've got some tough news here, but you guys did not get accepted into the school. And we were like, what? And I remember him saying, we had prayed through it, we talked it through, and what we clearly felt was God saying, no. No, not no ever, but just no, not right now. And I remember Ashley and I saying, are you sure you're praying to the same God? Because we prayed to him too. And he said, go for it, and our family and everyone else said, hey, this is awesome. This is God. And you're telling us no? And at the end of the day, you actually have the decision to tell us no. And it was hard for us. And in that moment is when we had to decide, are we going to hightail it out of here, or are we going to stay in this thing? Because to get married, to move to a city where we didn't have great job opportunities, to go against professors and families of saying, Waco, Texas, really? We could have gone to Houston and Austin and family business and different things. And then we're like all excited, we're moving here, we can be part of this school. And then it's like, no. We were wrestling with this moment of, are we going to bail? And there was about a week or two we took to pray, to talk, to cry, to be angry, and to say, wow, are we the biggest idiots in America or what? And we wrestled that through, and at the end of it, we said, you know what? We can tuck tail and run, or we can stay here and came what God originally said, which was come here and be part of what I'm doing. He didn't promise us to do a school. He didn't promise us any position. He didn't promise us anything. But what he did promise was, if you will be faithful to jump in the river, I will meet you there. And so that's what we did. So we came. We jumped in the river, and so we said, great, we're going to be the best young adult life group leaders this church has ever seen. I don't know if we were or not, but that was our motivation. And Fred Nelson, I love Fred. He's a dear friend down at Antioch, Houston, and I remember he was leading the young adult zone, and he would tell you, hey, it was kind of a ragtag crew. Okay, this is 2006. Things weren't, I know they're probably cool now, but they weren't cool then. And so in 2006, we jumped in fully, and I remember we were part of this life group, and about 6 months in, here we are newlyweds. We're in this life group, one of the youngest people in the whole life group, and they had asked us to intern, right? And so we're like, wow. Now, a little backstory. My wife, Ashley, never did anything in the college ministry at all in Waco. She never led a life group. She never led anything, which is so funny that God's journey for us was, you're actually not going to lead anything. You're going to have 0 position, 0 title, 0 recognition. You're just going to follow me. Although God knew what he was putting in us, depositing in us. And we look back now like it's laughable. I'm like, what? How did that even happen? But God knew, and God had his hand on us to keep us in a place of humility. Which would be my first thing I would say is, I think the number one thing when we talk about leadership is we look at the life of Jesus, of course. And the number one thing I go back to is the humility of Christ. Purely for him to come to this earth and then show us how to do it, it took humility. And so, in that journey, I would say, man, God took us through a humility journey, which we needed. We were both prideful, arrogant people. We needed breaking. Everyone does. In fact, every great leader needs to be broken somewhere along the way, so that God can actually use them effectively. So here we are, I have my wife. She's never led anything. I never led anything. And here we are. We're like leading this young adult life group. We're not even sure what we're doing. But we came into it and we said, we're going to be the best leaders we can be. We're going to honor people. We're going to love people. and we're just going to go for it. And so we took all the instructions, read through all the manuals and everything else we had at the time, and we went for it. And there we were leading our little life group. I remember it was multiplication night, very first multiplication, right? So we're talking about leadership. We're trying to multiply leaders, right? Because if you go to start something and you go to lead something and you are the beginning and the end, that won't last very long. You'll only go as far as your capacity can take you, right? You just can't go that far. And so there we were, and we said, okay, so the multiplication party happens. And at the time it was, everybody, we give everyone like a week heads up. You pray about it, right? The classic, we're in the living room together. The music is blaring. It's like the drama is about to unfold. Who's going where? And this is what we did at the time. It wasn't any sort of preemptive, hey, I need you to go over here. I need you to go over here. It was just purely like, hey, let's hear God and ready, set, go. That's what we did. So we did the ready, set, go. And it was, who's going to go to this life group? And so it was the existing leaders, the existing relationships. And it was like, ready, set, go. And so Ashley and I are over here, literally in this corner, and the other leaders are over here in this corner. This is the setup, right? It was like that awkward pick you for dodgeball, you don't get picked kind of scenario. And so everybody in the room went here, except for 4 people. One of them became a good friend, and so she came with us. One of them was just totally brand new to Life Group, and 2 other guys were both in a residency program, just moved to town the last 3 or 4 months, and they actually were both Aggies, and they knew I was an Aggie, so they said, hey, I'll go with the Aggie. That was it. We're this little tiny Life Group, but like 7 people. It was like 30 people. It was like the worst multiplication. It was like, wow, we didn't even really multiply. We just lost 7 people. So we started over here. But I share that with you because the humble beginnings of, hey, we didn't get into ADS. Wow. If I thought I was great, the air went out of the room. And then, hey, we're leading a life group. And we always say, hey, they're a leader if people actually follow them. And here we are, we have like the new people who are just picking us because they feel sorry for us, That's literally, I asked them years later, they said, we actually went to you because you didn't have anyone, so we just went over there. That's not like the great leadership model of like pity, And so here we are, but we took this little group of 7, and we said, day 1 from our life group, the next week we met, we said, you know what? We're going to take what God's given us, and we're going to be faithful with a little, right? Faithful with a little. So we just said, all right, here's what we got, God. And we prayed, and we spent the whole hour and a half of that life group listening to worship, sitting quietly, reading the Bible, and just journaling. And we just said, what does God want to say about this group? That was it. We didn't know what else to do. So everyone went on and shared. And it was powerful words and visionary things. We're like, great, this is us. And then we kind of, in a way, we didn't actually pull together and did 1, 2, 3, hurrah, but more or less, we pulled together and said, you know what? This is who we're going to be, and let's continue that. So for the next 2.5 years, as we were in Waco, we were able to grow that life group and multiply that life group and grow that life group and multiply that life group and grow that life group and multiply that life group 3 or 4 times. And by the end of it, I think it was 150 to 175 people that had come through our life group in the span of 2 years that were alive and on fire for Jesus. And it was so fun to see this like young adult, which seemed to be this awkward transitional years, like college is awesome, young adult's kind of a bore, and then you like get into like fan of the world and now things get exciting again. It was this like dip in life for people. And people didn't see it as that. They saw it as an exciting time to find God, to really go for things. And it was so fun to see this little deal. So all that's happening, and we're just minding our own business, trying to eke our way out some different jobs and do different things. I had 4 jobs in the span of 2 years trying to bounce around and figure stuff out. So things weren't great, but we were here. We were invested. God was doing stuff. And in the midst of all of that is when the invitation for leadership came to go from life group leader to church planter. Now, that's not the normal track, and you guys are actually in a much better, well-rounded, thought-through track right now, okay? Where you're actually getting training. You're actually going through a process. So we were like a big risk. I still tell Jimmy and Kevin today, who initiated with us, I said, man, you guys took an absolute risk on us. And they're like, yes, we did. All you saw us do was lead young adult life groups. That was it. That's all you had to go off of, But they took a risk, and that's what I want to say, too, is before we jump into some just detailed points is, Christ came in humility, and there's a humility that has to be on you in order for it to get on others. If it's not on you, it ain't going to be on them, right? Like, you actually draw who you are. So if you are humble, you draw humility. If you are prideful, you draw pride. And so the sowing and reaping reality in the kingdom never moves away. It always is. Just like if you have children, you get angry, all of a sudden you see your kids blowing up, and you're like, hey, why are you doing that? Dad, you did that yesterday. Oh, yeah, that's right. I mean, monkey see, monkey do. That is the kingdom. I mean, people follow what they see and what they hear. So if you come in humility, that'll happen as well. And so in our journey of coming from, rejection in a sense to not being known and not being involved in anything to all of a sudden getting handed something small and doing something with it. And then God saying through leadership is saying, hey, we really think that there's something there. They took a risk on us. And we want to take risk on people. Down in Bryan College Station, we take risk on people all the time. And you have to do that as a leader. If not, you're called a manager. Managers aren't bad, but that's great. But managers take the people that others have taken risk on and kind of now help shape them and move them around. But if you're going to lead, you actually have to lead in a way that is going to cost you something. And it's actually going to make you have to clean some stuff up. Because you can't be a squeaky clean leader. It's just not going to happen. If you do that, you actually will never get to where you're trying to get to in terms of breakthrough or breaking the mold or changing something. If not, you're just doing what everyone else is doing, which is playing it safe. And last I checked, leaders don't play it safe. Jesus didn't play it safe. He didn't. He took risk. He took risk on people. He took risk on 12 guys, of which one of them didn't pan out. Ultimately, the others did, but he took a risk on them. And he didn't have a bunch of profile testing or personality testing like we had today, which is actually very useful, although he was the Son of God and walked by the Holy Spirit, so he had a lot of intel, okay? But the Jesus model was he came in humility and he took risk on people. And that's how everything got started. Does that make sense? So I just want to give you a little bit of our backstory to give you some context before I talk about leadership and before you think, hey, Tyler's always wanted to be a leader. The only time I ever led anything in my life really was being a soccer player as the sweeper, which is the back defender, yelling at people in the game. I mean, that was my leadership for 18 years. Was barking orders at people to guard their man or to get back, and that's what I did. That was it. I never had leadership in anything else. But I just want to tell you, the people that you are looking for in your future churches or in your current situations, they are not the people typically that you're going to see on the front row. They're people that are leaders, but they're not calling themselves one. They just are. Is it making sense? My parents would say, Tyler, you've always been a leader. I'm like, what are you talking about? I never led anything. They're like, no. Like, when you spoke, people listened. When you led the way, you had conviction. That's what happened. And it was, people can usually see it, and that's what you're being asked to do, is to see that in people before they see it in themselves. I never, ever, ever would have dreamed, thought of planting a church or being a senior pastor or anything like that. I never would have. And I remember talking to leadership at this church initially with me. I said, I don't want to do that. I'm not I'll help. I'll be like support role. That's great, They're like, no. You're going to be the guy. And what's great about that is that you really want to try to find people that are not always thinking they are the guy. It doesn't mean that people are trying to not be confident or secure in who they are. You guys are in this room because you are leaders, right? In some way, somewhere down the road, someone reached out to you and said, hey, I want to pull you into something. And you may not have known what they were doing, but they saw gold in you, which is what leaders do. You look for people and you look at them and you call them out and then you take risk on them. Okay, so let me transition just to a couple things here. I just want to read some leadership quotes because I just think they're fun, all right? And so you can sit back and relax on these ones. These aren't mine, although I wish they were. But just some leadership quotes. All right. Leadership is the capacity to translate vision into reality. Leadership is the capacity to translate vision into reality. Another one, I love this one from Jack Welch. Before you are a leader, success is all about growing yourself. When you become a leader, success is all about growing others. Success is all about growing others. This is from John Maxwell. A leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. That actually sounds a lot like Jesus. Here's another one from Theodore Roosevelt, our wild cowboy president. The best executive is the one who has sense enough to pick good men to do what he wants done, and self-restraint enough to keep from meddling with them while they do it. More or less, don't be a micromanager, right? That would be a micromanager. But to be a leader, you have to lead them and release them. Just a couple more. A true leader has the confidence to stand alone, the courage to make tough decisions, and the compassion to listen to the needs of others. He does not set out to be a leader, but becomes one by the equality of his actions, integrity of his heart, General Douglas MacArthur. And the last one, Abraham Lincoln, pretty simple. Whatever you are, be a good one. Whatever you are, be a good one. So if you take our reality of being young adult leaders, it was just a young adult life group leader, not really something to hang your hat on in life, but we just said that's what we've been given, so we're going to do that well. All right, so I want to kind of talk about just a few things that I think could be and will be helpful for you, and also just, I know that Drew or Travis may have just some questions to kind of prompt me to ask some different things, but you know, when we look at Bryan College Station, the church that we planted about 9 years ago, when we were praying beforehand, and I would encourage all of you guys to really take specific time with your team. If you're in ministry right now, if you're going to be in the future planning a church or doing some sort of ministry-related work, I would really encourage you to take the proper time needed to just hear God unfiltered, just to hear Him directly and to hear Him with others. And really taking time to say, God, we're expecting to hear from you in this hour. And what I've learned over the years is that God really does want us to come like banging on the door. He wants us to come banging, to come beating on it, to come, not even just to come softly, but to say, Lord, we want to hear something today. And if we don't, we don't. But at least we're going to come with the attitude and the expectancy that I'm ready to hear something. So I remember we actually were in the 24-hour prayer room here right before we left. And we were praying one day. And as we were there, we were just saying, okay, God, we want you to speak. Give us a clear word. Lord, give us your vision for this city, right? Because that's what we're asking. We're not asking for my vision to get fulfilled. We're asking for your vision for this city. I'm simply a vessel. I'm simply a laborer. I'm simply someone that you have sought out to go and be a part of this work. So, Lord, what do you want to say? And I remember in that room, there's this clock. And it was like in my mind, as my eyes were closed, the Lord gave me this picture, and then we looked up, and here's this clock. And in the picture, it was a clock that had, you know, all 12 hours, and you had the hour hand right at about 11 o'clock. And what the Lord was saying is that in Bryan College Station, specifically with Texas A&M, there's a lot of people that are 11 o'clock. There's not 12 yet. And so at 11 o'clock, they're going to think that they're actually going in line with me. They're going to think that they're doing the good Christian thing. They're going to think that they're living a great kingdom, Jesus-centered life. But in reality, they're just a little off. But it's just so close to where they could be deceived for the next 30, 40 years. And as long as they're a little off, they're never going to be that powerful. They're going to be a step away from being really impactful. And the Lord said, I need you to go to take them to 12. That's the goal. It was to take them to 12. It was to point them in the right direction so that they actually would know, oh, wow, there is more. So we oftentimes say that, hey, we're just going for the more of God. And what that means, it doesn't mean you don't have God. It just means there's more to be had. And if you have the mentality of there's always more of God, you actually are never satisfied. Doesn't matter if you're 30, 50, 70, 90, you're never satisfied. You read the Bible, and there's always something fresh for it to say. And so we had this clear picture, and we've gone into it, and we have carried that with us the last 9 years. Our goal is to go find people and to take them from 11 to 12. And so we hear someone say something, and we're like, hey, that's great. This seems like a good Christian guy. I'm going to make this a kingdom, passionate, radical guy. Right? We've got lots of those. You have those here in Waco as well. And wherever your locations are going to be and the people that are streaming in, wherever you are, you're going to have people that God's already been pursuing, already working on. But the issue is, are you willing to be bold enough to get in their face and challenge them to say, you can live at 11 o'clock the rest of your life, and at the end of your life, you're going to look and say, wow, I've really missed it. I thought I was close, and you were early on, but over the lifespan, you got off. Or you can be willing to get in people's faces and maybe even offend them at times and just say, dude, there's more. There's more for you. I would say that we unapologetically get in people's faces. Jesus did that. And so I have a biblical precedent for doing that. We get in their face, though, for love. Right? I remember someone shared years ago, I was listening to some sermon, and they said, you know, when you read Jesus' interactions with the Pharisees, you can read it one way as like, man, Jesus was just really angry. He came at them, and you could be in the scene, you're like, wow, I don't want to be anywhere near that because he's just coming after him. But when you understand the heart of Jesus, you're thinking, oh, he's coming at them so strong because he wants them to hear. Him whispering wasn't doing it. But maybe flipping a table, maybe getting in their face, maybe sharing a parable or story that's going to hit them in the gut is going to get them to turn. And we have no idea how many Pharisees and Sadducees actually turned to Christ. We don't know. We just know of a few examples. We have no idea. We have no idea how many of them 6 months later are sitting there having a dream or waking up and saying, now it makes sense. No one's ever talked to me like that. You have to remember, Pharisees were leaders in their day, whether by birthright, training, whatever. They were known as leaders. And so they carried themselves as such. And when you have people in your church or in your city that think or believe or really are leaders, they usually are not talked to in a strong way. They're used to dishing it out. But as followers of Jesus, if we're going to call people up and if we're going to find the catalytic people in our community, which, by the way, you get one or two of them, they will bring in hundreds and thousands. They really will. They will do so much of the work for you because they're in vision. But the only way you're going to get them is if you're willing to go toe-to-toe with them. I'm not talking about height. You can be short and do it. You can be tall and do it. But I'm talking about you're willing to get up there and to say, you know what? I'm not impressed. I'm not impressed by you. I'm impressed by Jesus who's in you. You're not that impressive, nor am I. Neither of us. We're just vessels, you know. We came out of the dust, you know. So we're not a big deal. I say that all the time. You're not a big deal. I'm not a big deal. So if you think you're a big deal, go sit over there and figure out how you're not a big deal, then come on back to me. Because we're not interested in trying to prop ourselves up. We're interested in propping him up. We're interested in elevating him. And he can speak through you or not. He can use you or not. He will get his work accomplished. We all believe that, right? God will reach every tribe, tongue, and nation. He's looking for us to partner with him. He's looking for us to labor with him. He's going to reach our cities. He's going to reach Bryan College Station. And we are simply one church out of 150 that are trying to do that in different ways. We have a slice of the pie that we need to own. And if we do not own it, that is on us, and that is a miss. And therefore, because I'm so committed to us owning our piece of the pie, I then will be willing to go to people and to say, look, you are a great leader, and you love Jesus. But I need you to know that someone's going to push on you in your life. And I'm not intimidated by you. I'm not weird about you from a social standing or a gifting deal or anything like that. I'm not even threatened by you. You may be a better communicator, a faster runner, better with people, more insightful, way more prophetic. Spirit, you may be all better than me. But right now, I'm going to challenge you because you know what my goal is? My goal is to equip the saints for the work of service. And no one in your life so far has actually equipped you in this way, have they? We were just talking last night to a couple in our church, and we were talking to them about just different dynamics, different people, and we were citing these four women in our church that they love Jesus, they're awesome, but when they came into our college ministry, man, they were strong and fiery, right? I mean, now I'm married to a strong, fiery woman, which I love, but they were strong and fiery, and we had people at times that were like, hey, I don't know what to do with them. They seem very rebellious. They seem all this sort of stuff. And can I just say that a lot of times very strong leaders come across very rebellious and very arrogant. But what they're really looking for is someone to come alongside them, put their arm around them and say, hey, I believe you. I'm not threatened by you. I'm not intimidated by you. I love you, and I'm willing to help you. And when you can go toe-to-toe, when they throw out an idea at you about, hey, we should totally redo the way we do church services on Sunday, the way you're doing it's wrong, for me to listen to them and smile and say, man, those are some great ideas. But here's why we're not going to do that. And then be like, did you just hear what I said? Yeah, that's great. We're not going to do that. And I'll tell you why. Because you have great ideas and you're very zealous and passionate. I don't want to kill that at all. But I'm going to help balance it because I want you to be a mature person, not just a zealous person. If you're mature with zeal, oh, that's a lot better. And so that's how you have to approach people. And so we've had some of these folks, and we were talking to them last night, and we just said, look, you have to be able to listen to their ideas, handle their pushback on what the church isn't doing or is doing or whatever should be happening, and be confident, secure enough in God as a leader to say, hey, that's great, but you know what, we're not going to go there, without putting them down and without also doing everything they want you to do. Does that make any sense? So if you approach people as a person that God has made, God has wired, God has gifted for a specific purpose and reason, it's our job to help them understand where that gift and where that passion and zeal needs to be channeled. If not, they're very destructive. They're very hurtful. But if you can get in their world and say, man, I am so for you. And by the way, any pushback you come, brainstorming session, throw it out there. I'm not intimidated by that. And that, at the end of the day, you can only do that if you're very secure. you've got to be secure in who you are and in your role and in your gift set. My wife, if you've ever had her pray for you, she's like way more prophetic than I am and just way more powerful like in the spirit and praying than I am. And I'm okay with that. It's not that I'm like not going for it in God. She's just gifted in a very unique way. And she like gives words to people. You know, we're over at the team that are gathering, and she's just kind of going one after another, and I'm just kind of following her around like, man, bang, bang. She's just giving people stuff, and it's powerful. And if you've ever gotten her to like send you a text or a scripture or something, you're like, okay, that was like right on. You know, I send it, and you're like, hey, I feel pretty encouraged. You know, but she is so powerful. I am not intimidated by my wife. I love my wife. She's also very submitted, very honoring, respectful, but I have learned to release her. And it's taken me 12 years of marriage to learn that, how to release her in her gifting and be secure and honor her. And at the same time, then multiply that out from my marriage into our church, right? And so you have to remember that what you do at home is really going to play out pretty majorly what you do in the church, what you do in the workplace. It is the private and public matching up. So if you're not confident, secure at home, how are you going to be that on stage? How are you going to be that in that meeting with the person? All right. I'm big on tangents, so here we go. We're going to try to get back to the deal here. All right. Okay. Now, Gallup did some research, and they were polling different companies and leaders, and they kind of cited 5 rare talents that they found to be pretty consistent with very high-level leaders. We could call them catalytic leaders, okay? So these are 5 things. I'll read them out to you. And what they also cited is that what they found is about 1 out of every 10 high-level leaders actually had all 5. So 1 out of 10 actually had this. All right. The first one is aptitude for motivating others. An aptitude for motivating others. I'll just go through them and explain a few. The second one is assertiveness to overcome obstacles. Assertiveness to overcome obstacles. The third talent they saw expressed was excellence in building trusting relationships. Excellence in building trusting relationships. Number 4, the capability to create a culture of accountability. Capability to create a culture of accountability. And the 5th one they cited as a rare talent was ability to make unbiased decisions that benefit the whole. Ability to make unbiased decisions that benefit the whole. Now, I just want to reference a couple of these. That last one, that has been so difficult to get into people for us, is to actually say, make decisions based on what's best for the whole flock, not just for one sheep. Because in some ways, you're like, wait, aren't we supposed to go after the 99? Isn't that what we're supposed to do? And what I try to help people understand is that, yes, you go after them to bring them back into the fold. And as a church, as a leader, whether you're leading a department, a ministry, a huge thing, a small thing, you have to understand personally that you have got to make decisions that are not just considering the feelings and the well-being of an individual, but you've got to consider the whole. Because if you just take care of 1 or 2 people, but you miss the whole, everything gets shipwrecked. And so that's hard to do, right? Because we love people. We actually care, but we're not a cutthroat organization, right? We are not corporate America or something that's just like, we look at the bottom line, the dollars don't add up, the sales, and we just cut people. No. There's a relationship. It's hard to fire people. It's not fun. I've had to do it a few times, and I don't enjoy it. But we have to look at things and say, you know what? We care about people enough, and we also care about the organization enough and what God's called us to, that we have to make tough decisions. The willingness and the commitment to make decisions. And the simplest level, right, for us is life groups, right? All of us are going to be leading life groups and having people that are leading life groups under us. And for them to train them to say, look, man, you got to make a decision. If this guy wants to go off on a tangent in life group, you've got to curtail that in a very loving, compassionate way, or else he's going to take everyone there with him. And that's not helpful for the whole. He thinks it's helpful, but the best thing to do is to take him on a one-off and just talk it through with him a little bit. And that's difficult to do as a leader, and how to do it without being awkward and dishonoring someone and all those different elements. But we have to remember that we have to be able to make decisions based off what's best for the whole, what's best for the church. Another thing I just want to highlight is the assertiveness to overcome obstacles. I don't know if you guys have read the book Grit. I listen to it. I'm more listening than reading these days. We have 5 small children, and I am pretty tired every night. And so if I try to read, I've got about 10 minutes in me, and then it's just off to snoring, okay? So I don't read a lot these days. I do listen a lot, all right? And so I'm very thankful for that technology. Thank you, Jesus. I'm sure I would figure it out if I lived in another decade or another age, but I don't. I live now. So I've been listening to this book, Grit, and this kind of stuck out to me as kind of one of these grit elements of the willingness to overcome obstacles. And what I want to say is in leadership, for our journey, and for the people that we lead, and I know many of you have been involved in this, and our churches all over the world, you're just going to have obstacles every week. Some are big, some are small. And your ability to actually overcome that obstacle and then an hour later have a lunch with someone celebrating their birthday is what's necessary. You actually have to be able to say, wow, that was really hard. I had to do a throwdown with whatever, someone on my staff or one of our leaders, or talk through something really hard, or ask someone to step down from leadership or from life group or whatever, and then go into like a ping pong tournament with the staff for 30 minutes and have fun. Like, you have to be able to shift gears. That actually happened yesterday, and I lost, which is frustrating, to Mitchell Welch, who was actually streaming this. So Mitchell, there's your shout out for beating me in ping pong. But, you know, like, you have to do that. I mean, every day that I wake up and then I go to work, there are so many different emotional moments that are happening that you just have to be able to shift from one to the other. You know, when Jimmy had taken me on a trip to Russia once, about 5 years ago, and he just took me on a trip and a couple of those guys, and we were there 4 or 5 days, and I remember someone asking me to say, hey, what'd you learn? Like, what'd you learn just being around Jimmy for a few days? I said, the number one thing I learned is his ability to shift gears into every conversation and be engaging everywhere he went. I mean, it was incredible. We were all jet lagging. We all did the like 24 hours of 4 flights, you know, across 14 time zones. We were all exhausted. And on that trip, he had interacted with so many different people. People he was planning on and people wasn't planning on. And he invested in them and loved on them. And I was blown away. Like, I thought I actually had high capacity. And I was like, wow, I don't. I have peanuts. And so I just want you to know, if you guys are here at Antioch Waco, you are blessed and privileged to be underneath someone that actually operates at a very, very high level. And what I mean is not that he's just big talk. He is big on engaging. And if you meet with him, he is there. And he will be there, and he has to shift gears to the next thing. But man, I love that about him. And you have to do it to actually overcome obstacles. And that could be your own sleep depravity. That could be your own things going on at home. I cannot tell you how many Tuesday mornings I have left and gone to the office to get ready to work on a sermon. So my deal is I work Tuesday, Wednesday mornings on my sermons. And I just come out of an argument with my wife. I just had to get disciplined to some of my kids. So I'm driving the office. Sure, I would love to just be like joyful and just, man, everything's great today. You know, I'm going to get this great message. But there I am sitting down and saying, okay, Lord, I've got to engage right here. Like, I've got to prepare. I've got to get my heart ready to preach on joy. And so here we go. So Lord, help me out. 20 minutes ago was pretty rough. You know, sparks were flying. But here we are. And I just want to tell us, you have to do that. If that's not naturally your bent, and I would just say for all the mid-range to high feelers in the room, it's just more difficult. My wife is like that. She's learned it. It's just more difficult. And so if you're more on the low feeler side of things, that's easier for you. But it doesn't matter where you fall on that scale, your personality, whatever, you can do it. You can discipline your life to really honor and value every person you're in front of, in every situation, every meeting you're in, to be completely engaged and completely locked into them. So the ability to overcome obstacles. Okay, so I want to get into these kind of two kind of main things that I really want to share with you guys. And those two things are raising up leaders and being a leader. Okay? So I'll kind of, if you're more on the linear thinking side and want some good bullet points, hopefully we'll get there. So raising up leaders is going to be kind of part one we're going to go after. Then we're going to be going after being a leader. All right, so raising up leaders. So again, when I was just praying through and working through on this, I just thought, you know, if I can just share with you some of our story and our insights, hopefully it'll help you along the way. So you can take it or not take it, but hopefully we'll give some helpful pieces. So the first point on raising up leaders would be, number one is identify. You've got to identify them. Now, when I say identify, I mean you've got to identify the right people, which is difficult. Every person probably has their own way of trying to figure people out. And at the same time, there's not a whole lot you can know off of first impression. You can know a little bit. But then we tend to make a lot of assumptions. But in our realm of work, you have to be able to get to know someone and in partnership with the Holy Spirit, try to figure out, what are the possibilities for this person? But when we talk about identify, what we do in College Station is this. I first and foremost look at character over gifting. We always have, we always will. There's actually not a person on my staff that I've ever seen a resume on. We don't ask for it. And maybe we should, but we don't. Life group leaders, we don't ask for a resume. When we go after a leader, we look at the character of Christ in their life. Is it there or not? If it's not there right now, they're not ready to lead. Is the bottom line. I don't care how gifted you are. I don't care if you're the son of whoever or whatever you're doing. It doesn't matter. If the character ain't there, Jesus said, judge a tree by its fruit. So we look at the fruit of the character of someone's life. That's what we go after. Because if the character is there, guys, you can actually train the other things with them. But character can't just be trained. It has to be earned. It has to be worked for. That's actually the sanctification process. That's actually quite painful, but needed. Everybody has to go through the process of sanctification, developing the character of Christ. Now, with that said, I was saying we're talking about identifying people who raise them up. We also want to set the bar high. We don't set the bar low. We live in a day and age to where some people would say, hey, you're not going to get volunteers if you set the bar here. Hey, you're not going to get anyone on your staff if you do that. I mean, come on. And my argument is, well, we don't have time to go through over today, but biblically speaking, just look at what's commanded of us to be a Christian. Not a leader, just a Christian. Like a follower of Jesus. It's pretty daunting. The standards that are set for us in terms of integrity, purity, heart, mind, soul, body, all of it, our words, our thoughts, our actions, all of it. It's Jesus really set a high bar, which is great because it takes our whole lives as we continue to go after that. So we look at character. When you identify someone, do not be enthralled or impressed with the outside. We have people in our church that are actually great musicians. And for seasons, we never asked them to do anything. They wanted to do stuff. We said, no, I think we just want you to get with Jesus and be in discipleship and get free, and then we'll talk about it. Because we don't need you leading from a place that's still very broken. I need you leading from a place that's whole. Doesn't mean it to be perfect, but there's some basic standards we see biblically that we're going to line up for you, and we're going to hold you to it, and we're going to hold ourselves to it. So character is a big deal for us. So when you're looking for leaders, I would argue you should look at their character and not the gifting first. In ministry and in churches, we often reverse the two, and it's a huge mistake. It doesn't mean they can't pan out, but I would argue there's more stories of it not panning out than it is if you go after the gifting. Because then what happens, they're so gifted, you give them responsibility, and the weight of that responsibility crushes them to where their character that's not very stable can't take it, and all of a sudden things fall. Whenever I hear of leaders, I don't say falling into sin, choosing sin. Whenever I hear of leaders, churches and things dissolving, even our own city, there's been 4 or 5 pastors in the last 3 years that have exited. And there's been different reasons why, and several of them are moral failure and different things. And it's just, every time it happens, it's great, we just gave the enemy another reason to lie to people to say the church isn't credible, isn't trustworthy. And it's because it's look, if you've got one employee at a company that goes awry, all of a sudden the whole company is no, that was one guy out of 100,000. But that one guy now has got the label that, they're all like that. It is brutal. And so I am so committed to the people that we raise up, that we are accountable for, which at the end of the day, remember, as a leader, you are being held responsible for raising them up. You are held accountable for that. It is on you. Just like your children, it is on you. You're responsible for raising them. It's not someone else's job. When you raise up a leader, you're not responsible for all the character in their life and all the things they do, but you're responsible in making that judgment call and raising them up and keeping them accountable. And so I take that very seriously. As we raise people up, it's we don't raise them up just because we just need to fill the spots. I would go down just to a few life groups in the whole church if we needed to. and say, guys, we're going to have life groups of 100, and so come to the park. That's what we're doing, because enough of you aren't walking in purity. And so until we can, we won't have more life groups. And that may be different than what some of you guys think or others think, but I'm committed to the character and the purity of what we do is what allows the power to come. When we walk in character and humility and purity, all of a sudden, God's power can be poured out and we can handle it. But if we don't do that, we cannot handle it, and we will not be salt and light in a city on the hill to the people in our city. So when we talk about identifying them, look at the character. Another thing, don't confuse high potential with high performing. Don't confuse high potential with high performing, because you see, high performing people usually are performing really well because they're already in a really good spot, right? So like they're really proficient, very effective at what they're already doing. It doesn't mean they can't go up more. Certainly they can. But don't just say, oh, because they're performing really well in this area or in this role, that means they're just destined for more leadership. We've made that mistake at times when we take a life group leader who's actually a great life group leader. We turn him into a section leader, and the section falls apart. Like, well, wait a second. They were a great life group leader. Oh, they were a great life group leader. We should have kept them there. In fact, we just did a deal in our college ministry this semester. We kind of did a pretty massive change, which was previously we had allowed section leaders to not lead life groups, and a few of them did, but most of them didn't. So they were like great life group leaders, right? Multiplying, loving on people, pastoring, and then we pull our best leaders out of life group leading and into section leading, into this overseer role. And they were like, wow, these life groups are really struggling. Wonder why that is. Oh, because we just took our best people and said, don't do that anymore. It's like, oh. I mean, and so we had the realization of, no, we're going to have all of our best leaders leading. And so our section leaders, so now we made the section smaller. Well, they're saying we can't do all the work. Great. Now we're going to give you 2-3 life groups max. That is the max, right? Once it gets to essentially 3 or more, it's an automatic multiplication of the section. That's it. We're going to give you 2-3 life groups. You're leading one. You're over 1 or 2 other ones. That's it. And now all of a sudden, they're thriving again. They're getting healthy again. And all of our overseers are actually doing this stuff. Because when you get far removed from the basic level stuff, your people stop respecting you. I had that experience at our church. I'm like, I started this church. We started every ministry there was, from the youth group, I just for the kids, okay, I'll admit that, but everything else. We started the youth and the college, young adults, families. And so Ash and I took a year off from leading life group, because we've been doing it for however long. And it's like 6 months in, I'm starting to get little whispers of like, well, the Hardys don't really know what it's like. And I'm like, oh my, you did not say that, you know. And so all of a sudden, it just takes a few whispers to get me fired up again. And then we're back into like taking over life group, and our life group is going to be better than all of yours, you know. And so that's when you know you're like a leader, when it just bugs you when people come at you like that. And you're like, okay, I'm going to show you guys how to do it again. So we did, and we are, which is great. Thank you, Jesus. But what made me realize is that, you know, there's something to what they're saying was right, which was he's not connected to currently what's happening, right? Because you only have so much clout to say, been there, done that. It's been there, done that. Oh, and I'm still doing that. As a leader, you can't just be a been there, done that. That's called board members, right? Oh, yeah, we did that, right? But an effective, great board member is like, yeah, I'm actually leading a church too. So I get it, because we had this conversation 2 weeks ago. Oh, I get it, right? And so remember that as leaders, you have got to remember that you have to have the mindset of you still got to be on ground level. I love my father-in-law, Wayne McMillan. He works for Staples. And years ago, he told me, so he's pretty high up in the company, and he had told me, he said, you know, one of the things that I love doing that I've realized I need to do is I go down to the warehouse. And so on a pretty consistent basis, I don't know if it was every month or, you know, every 2 months, he would go down to the warehouse floor, and he would just kind of mingle with all the guys in the shipping area, from truck drivers to the guys who just loading the boxes. These are your entry level, you know, $8, $9 an hour guys. This is what he would just go mix it up with them and get to know them a little again. And Wayne, he wouldn't say this, but like at that time when he had that position and those different things, I mean, he had the respect of the entire workforce. Because they're like, hey, Wayne's up here in the suit, but he comes down the floor often and connects with us. No one else does that. There's something to be said for no matter where you are, you've always got to make sure you're connecting back to the base level. I purposely serve in our children's ministry once or twice a year, on purpose, so that I show our kids, hey man, I'm here. And when I do that, the parents freak out. They're like, oh no, the senior pastor's in the room with my kids, you know? And they know I'm going to be on, and I'm going to talk to them afterwards about their children, And so I did this last time. We had a couple of boys in there. They were pretty rowdy. And I pulled the parents aside and said, hey, guys, so got to be here today? They're like, you were in here today? It's like, yeah, I was. And let me give you a couple of tips here on your boys, And they were like, like fear of God, I was like, nobody's fear of God, just fear of Tyler in this moment. And so we talked it through, and it was really helpful. And those boys have changed. And it's like, this guy actually really cares enough about the families and the kids to go and serve. Most people would say, Tyler, you don't be doing that. I mean, you're above that. You're the senior pastor. You need to be mixing it up with people on Sundays and doing this and that. And I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't earn the respect of your people. The respect of your people is made when you go to the ground level. Oftentimes people say, hey, we really love having College Station people come, And I say, well, first and foremost, you need to know that I didn't birth them or raise them. They just came to our city, and we are lucky enough to get to help shape them and mold them and take them from 11 to 12. Remember, I'm taking people from 11 to 12 most often, not from 6 to 12. Some of the places you guys are going, you're taking people from 6 to 12, and that's harder. And I want you to hear me say that there's a lot of our churches in the U.S. that are in very difficult places, that it is hard. Doesn't mean there's not fruit to be had, doesn't mean there's not a harvest to be had, but it's difficult. The amount of effort and energy maybe I have to put into one guy, they may have to put in 10 times. You need to acknowledge that, which means there's never any room for comparison. You do what you need to do where you are and just do the best you can. And so if you're in a place like I love Andrew Bach and just love him and Kara doing up in Seattle, and it's tough sledding up there. But they're impacting for the kingdom of God. And it's tough. We don't have a lot of articles written about us in the local paper, but they have. We don't have entire neighborhoods petitioning to not have us have a church building somewhere. Most places are like, sure, we'd love the church to come in. I mean, it's a different paradigm. So you have to remember wherever you are going, when you're identifying leaders, you have to know that you're starting in a different place. When we first started out and we were trying to identify these people, I had to take the best that I had, which at the time, it actually wasn't that great. You would have thought we'd have all these amazing people, and it wasn't. So our first kind of group of college life group leaders, we had about 8 or so of them. 4 of them we had asked to step into leadership within 4 to 6 months because of major moral failure, major. And I'm thinking, wow, these are our best people, and they just had to step out of leadership. What are we doing? But you have to take risk on people early on. I'm 9 years in. I can actually afford to look and say, no, we're not going to put that person in there right now. But early on, I didn't have that. So we had high standards, absolutely. But when you're really early on, you've got to take even more risk on people because they actually never been challenged like that. Do you understand what I'm saying? Later on, you still take risk, but you actually have now a core nucleus of people that get it, and they can actually help you develop those people instead of it just all resting on you. So early on, you're going to have to roll the dice on some people and say, wow, this is our best guy. Okay, he's been sober for 2 weeks. That's our leader because no one else is. That's our guy. Do you understand me? I mean, you talk to overseas guys, they would attest to that and say, hey, you've got to take the people that are hungry for God and you work it through with them over time. So just remember that when you're identifying people, yes, you are looking for character, but what I'm saying is you're looking for the people who have the best character available. Does it make any sense? No matter where you're starting. All right. Just a second note on the high potential, high performing thingy. So again, the difference is that, with the high potential, you're looking at, as best you can tell, hey, does this person have what it takes to go to there? I don't know if they do or don't, but it seems like they maybe do. And you just have to try to evaluate them in a way to say, hey, do they need to stay where they are, or is there a place for them to go? And sometimes you don't know. You give them a shot, and it's like you go from life group leader to section leader, and you're thinking, okay, that was a great move. And sometimes it wasn't. And you say, hey, that's no big deal. You're actually a lot better at the ground level of actually making stuff happen in the life group than kind of overseeing. And that's great. Not everyone's made to be an overseer. And so remember, when you're developing leaders, make sure that they aren't getting knocked for not keeping going up the ladder. Does that make any sense? It's actually not about a life of going from entry level to mid-level to CEO. That's actually not the trajectory that Jesus calls us all to. He calls some to that, but most he doesn't. If not, you'd have a whole country of CEOs and no employees to work for. I mean, it doesn't work that way, right? And so you have to understand, you're trying to put people in a position to really thrive and excel as a leader. If they're leading 10 or 100 or 1,000, that's good. And you should applaud that, and you should honor them. You say, man, you are great at that. And that way they feel like they have your full support and they say, I don't need you to be the overseer manager or whatever. I need you to do this really well. If we get that in our heads and hearts and all of a sudden we say, you know what? That is how Jesus lived and operated. He loved on people. He invested in people. And at the end of the day, we see even amongst his disciples, they didn't all have the same gift level. They were all followers. They're all disciples. They're all committed. They didn't have the same gifting, and Jesus was okay with that. But he learned how to lead each of them a little differently. A couple other thoughts just with identifying people would be evaluate people based off what they're already doing. I mentioned it earlier. Jesus said, judge a tree by its fruit. So you can do the same thing. You have license to do that. You look at the fruit. You look at the fruit. You're not judging the tree. You're actually looking at the fruit of the tree. What are they already doing? In our case, I'm convinced, and I'm pretty sure I followed up with Jimmy about this years later, was the main reason why we were asked to consider doing a church plant in College Station, Texas, because of what we were doing in the young adult zone. That's it. By the way, we never had any experience leading anything in the college ministry, and we were going to a town that was majority college students, which was kind of weird, right? And so just because we didn't have experience with that civic age group didn't mean we didn't have what it took to do, like what it took to actually do it. Does it make sense? You don't actually have to be working with kids in order to be a great kids person. But you got to have a heart for kids and a heart for Jesus. You may be with college students, all of a sudden the Lord calls you to that, you can do that well. What I found is that leaders actually, most of the time, when you call them up to a standard, when you give them an opportunity, they will actually excel at everything. Like your high-level leaders. It doesn't matter what it is. They'll just do it really well. Because they're so committed to excellence and fruitfulness and impact. It doesn't matter if you say you're going to be the janitor, they're in. And by the way, that's who you want. Like, the cream of the crop leaders are the people that are like, dude, I will preach or I will sweep. And I will be joyful with both. To say that to your face and to say that in their journal. That's what you want. Like, you actually want the talking points in the journal to line up. Not, I told Jimmy this, but really, I mean, golly, this is a joke, but I'll do it. I mean, that's not who you want. And truthfully, that's what we look for. We often say that, in Bryan College Station, what we are, we're a blue-collar church. Doesn't mean everyone has blue-collar jobs, but the work ethic. The mindset is, if you're not willing to sweep, you're not able to lead. Because Jesus came as a servant, right? He came to give his life as a ransom for many, so that we might be saved. He came as a servant, and so his mentality of leadership with the servant leadership piece is he was willing to do the dirty work. Just like I said, you're willing to lead a life group, you're willing to clean up the mess, you're willing to help out here, you're willing to do the dirty work, even though many people would say that's beneath you. I never see Jesus saying that is like beneath you. Nothing was beneath him. He went as low as you can go, and if he is our ultimate model for leadership, then we've got to be willing to go as low as he's willing to go. Last just kind of tip I would give you is we've tried to do this at different points, which is we're trying to evaluate, identify someone. We will sometimes give them a volunteer role just to see what they're made of before we initiate anything else. So we give them some of these maybe even entry level. It could be serving in some particular ministry or, hey, would you man the front doors on a Sunday morning? And we just see how serious they take the task. If they blow you off, then they're not ready to lead. If they blow off the small task, I don't want them leading. Because what they're communicating to you is, I'm above that, I need something bigger and better. And I don't want that. That's something we weed that attitude out all the time. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist in our church, but when we smell it, we weed it out. When we deal with it, say, bro, you need to drop the attitude or you're gone. And so it's a little bit of a hard knocks mentality, but it's like when all of a sudden that's the culture, and it's like, dude, people are not impressed. And we have people come to our church who've been in ministry for however many decades, or much older than me, wiser than me, and all that sort of stuff, and they come in and they say, hey, we'd love to be here, but I'm really looking to help out, and so can I teach like a Bible study for you guys on Sundays? I'm like, man, that'd be great someday, but right now I just need you to show up on Sundays and come to a life group. Which one do you want to go to? Well, now I don't think you heard me. I've done seminars, different stuff, and man, that's great. I want you to come on Sundays and come to life group. Which one do you want to go to? And they don't get it. And then they want private meetings. Like, we'll start meeting when you go to a life group. It's like, well, don't you understand where I'm coming from? I was even an elder or deacon. I don't really care about that. Last I checked, Jesus doesn't really care about your track record. He cares about your hunger and your humility today. And so, are you willing to jump in or not? Are you willing to be at a church that's a lot younger than you are and willing to invest in people, or are you just here for you? If you're here for you, you're going to leave. I can say that because I really mean that. It's a hassle to have people that actually don't really want to be a part of what you're doing, are just there to be like excess. Do you know what I'm saying? And when they have the mindset of, I'm just here for me, they're excess. It's like, no, I need a Holy Spirit to convict their heart and to change them so they can be a team player and be part of what we're doing. Does it make sense? So just, again, giving people an opportunity to jump into what you're already doing or to volunteer in something. All right, so identify is the first thing that I would say that we really look at. The second thing would be this. We'll just say start. Start. Start early. Develop people while they are young or develop people while they are new. Don't have some sort of timeline in place of, well, everyone has to be here for a year before we ask them to do something. That happens all the time in life group, you know? It's like, well, these guys have been here 6 months. These guys just got here a month ago. Shouldn't they be leading? It's like, whoever said that? Like, where is that instruction in the Bible of you have to have a certain amount of time put in order to earn your way into? No. It is based off of obedience, right? And hunger and commitment to what Jesus called them to do, right? We look at maturity as how much is someone willing to obey? And so when you look at people, you have to start them early. You need to give them clear expectations when you do give them a shot to jump into something. Make it clear. Let them know what the win is, right? A lot of times we're so vague because we don't want to get into it or we think it's like anti-spiritual or something. To say, hey, here's the win. I want you to lead this life group and I want you to multiply it in the next 6 months. That's a goal. Doesn't happen, still love you, you're loved by God, everything's great, but that's a goal. So I want to see if you're going to rise up to it. And if they rise up to it, you know that they really have a leadership drive in them to say, yeah, I really want to fulfill that. I want to submit to that. I want to honor that. And I can see the reasons why that's actually really impactful. And when you unpack the vision, unpack the clear expectations for them, then people can sign up to that. I would also say that it's better to train someone who is raw than someone who is seasoned. It's better to train someone who is raw than someone who is seasoned. Oakwell Academy is a private Christian school that my wife and I and another couple at our church started about 5 years ago. It's not affiliated with Antioch, it's separate, but we started the school, and when we were looking for teachers, and still are every year, we had the option to look at teachers who teach in the public school realm, K through 12, whatever, and the difficulty we found is that the majority of those teachers, they have a certain way that they've been trained and they've taught, and which is right. They have been trained to have a public school mindset, and it's a larger scale, and much bigger in our school, larger classroom sizes, a way of doing curriculum, all that sort of stuff. But our school is a private Christian university model classical education school, which is nowhere taught in any of their curriculum at A&M when they're getting their teaching degree. So, because what we're saying is actually we want you to bring Jesus into the classroom like all the time. We actually want you to partner with parents because it's not a full-blown private school. It's kind of a blended model of homeschool and private school. And so you have people that are trying to apply for the job and get their mind wrapped around, wait a second. I'm teaching, but so are the parents, and we're both teaching curriculum, and wait, there's no homework? I don't understand that. And wait a second, you're saying we can bring Jesus into science and math and this and that? Yeah, that's what we want you to do. And then wait a second, we're talking about there's like this like honor code and this character code in the classroom, on the recess, at the lunchroom that we hold standards to. And then wait a second, you're talking about classical education and what does that even mean? What does that even mean? And what is that? And all of a sudden it's like this paradigm shift. It doesn't mean they can't get there. We actually have a few that are teaching at the school, they're public school teachers, but it's been a major shift of like, oh, that's just so different. And in the same way, when you're talking about people and pulling them into leadership, if you have someone that has all their ways of doing something and you're trying to turn them, especially as we know, it's just like what is true. I'm 36 now. The older I get, the slower I am to move. I mean, it's true. My back actually hurts right now, but like literally like slower to change. I still want to change. I'm still fiery, but it's just there's something that's kind of I'm having a battle against, which is this slow movement, slow willingness to turn. When you have young people in the faith, or literally physically like age young, they're just more willing to just say, let's go for that. Let's turn. Let's be flexible. But as you get a little older, you get more seasoned, if you will, into a certain routine or whatever. It's difficult, right? And you could ask anybody at any church and say, hey, who's more willing to change, your college student leaders or your family life group leaders? I mean, it's a no-brainer. We all know the answer. It's like the family's like, okay, we've got to unpack some experiences, some history. Okay, I get that. And how's it going to affect everything? And there's more responsibility. There's more to consider, absolutely. But it's just harder to kind of turn the corner unless they had this kind of like really radical encounter with Jesus, which is what we need a lot of times to get people to move. That's what got me to shift. It wasn't just good talking points. It was like an encounter with the Holy Spirit that just messed me up. And it was like, okay, I'm in. And it's like, oh, that was easy. I mean, one meeting with the Holy Spirit is like 5 years of counseling. It's just like, boom. It just happens, you know? I remember having this lady in our church, and she's still in our church, and she had gotten divorced years ago, and she's still single and up in her 60s. And, you know, oftentimes in worship, I will kind of walk to the back and just worship back there. Just because, I don't know, I just like being away from the stage and just kind of back in my own where no one's looking at me and stuff. And so I'm back there walking, and she pulls me aside. She says, Tyler, I got to tell you something. I said, what's that? She said, I'm free. And this is like during the worship set. I'm like, free of what? You know, like this is exciting. Free of what? She said, I've had bitterness in my heart for the last 25 years towards my husband. And God has set me free. I said, when? She said, during that chorus. I said, what? She's like, yeah, the Spirit of God just hit me and I released him. I was like, praise God for like worship. Like, I didn't even have to preach that day. And this woman's free. I mean, this is awesome. One encounter with the Holy Spirit means potential leaders, as you identify them and as you start them in, what you are looking for is not also just good training techniques. You're looking for them to meet God in a powerful way that turns their heart. So if you identify them, the character's looking good, but they're a little arrogant, you're like, man, I'm not going to be able to beat that out of them. I need the Holy Spirit to take it out of them. And so you bring them in and say, hey, man, we're just going to worship Jesus and just ask him, what does he want to do and what's he want to say and how's he want to speak? And next thing you know, the Holy Spirit meets them in that place in their personal time with Jesus, whatever it's going to look like. But as you start someone, you've got to make sure that it's not just you engaging them, giving them opportunities, but you are pushing them towards the throne. You're pushing them towards the one who could ultimately turn their hearts on a dime. It takes lots of conversations and a lot of luck and a lot of hope, and you know, but it's like Jesus, it can happen right there. So don't ever forget that when you're talking about raising people up. Also, just with starting people early, you've got to challenge them. You've got to challenge them. Be willing to give them, I would call them stretch assignments. So stretch assignments are things that just are going to make them uncomfortable. I love doing that to people. In fact, a few years ago, this can be an idea if you want to use this, but I'd gone to our college pastor, Mitchell, and I said, Mitchell, I'm going to go out to my in-laws' ranch in Caldwell, Texas, and we're going to go cut some wood for the weekend because we were doing this men's deal for the church's big bonfire. So we actually, so there's a bunch of debris, wood that needed to be moved, and also freshly cut. So I said, give me 10 college guys, leaders, potential leaders, give them to me. So he gave them to me. I said, I initiated with them, and I texted them. I got them in 2 groups of 5. I brought my boys out at the time, which I think Graham was 3, Ethan was 5. Okay, 3 and 5-year-old. We're going to do like a 10-hour shift on doing this wood. It's hot, okay? It is the summer. So I intentionally got 1 bottle of water for every guy. You get 1 bottle of water. We walked up to the woods. And we had the chainsaws and the axes and the whole deal. And my whole goal, I had 2 goals. Goal number 1, we're trying to get wood for this awesome bonfire, which it was awesome, by the way. Goal number 2, test every one of these guys. These were Mitchell's leaders, his ministry guys, his life group leaders, up and coming, young bucks. So we're out there. And I intentionally didn't talk about anything spiritual on purpose. I said, hey guys, here's what we're doing. I made it very clear. We're here to work. Thanks so much for volunteering, coming. You're going to get some sweat out of this, so you don't have to work out this week, but hey, this is going to be great. So glad you're here. Thanks a lot. Jump in. Everyone's got a bottle of water. Let's go. What unfolded in the first chunk, the first group of 5 guys, was the guy that was the quietest was the hardest worker. My 3-year-old son outworked the other 4 guys, as did my 5-year-old. My children didn't complain once about water. 4 of these guys did. And 2 of these guys, half the time, were just sitting around talking. I gave them very clear instructions. We're going to work for the next 4 hours. We're going to work hard. We're going to haul this lumber over. I got 1 guy did it nonstop, no complaining. I got 2 children that did it nonstop. And I got 2 guys that sit around and chatted about spiritual matters and things going on in their hearts and lives, even though that was not the program. We'll talk about that on the car ride. I asked you to come work. So I did it with the second group. Similar deal panned out. I gave Mitchell a report that night on Voxer. I still use Voxer, yes. And I gave him a long report. I said, hey, I'm going to give you intel on these 10 guys. You ready? I gave him a 60-second bio on every guy. And I was pretty accurate. And I just said, hey, this guy, he's a hard worker. He's quiet. He's kind of sneaky leader. You need to raise him up. He's legit. People will follow him. This guy talks a big game. I would never trust him in a battle. I think he would leave my back exposed. This guy right here, and I just gave my analysis. And you know what? 5 years later, that's kind of panned out. Most of those guys. Now, as a leader, you have to be creative in thinking about how to position people in a way they don't know that you're figuring them out, but you're figuring them out. I'd never walk into any meeting not trying to figure someone out. I always do. I'm trying to figure out how can I help them, what's the problem, what's the root cause, how can I encourage you, where can you go, how can I equip you, where do you fit on the kingdom bus, and all that. I'm always thinking that. As a leader, you have to. Because your goal is to raise people up, right? It's not about you. It's about raising people up. And at the end of the day, you'll hang your hat on, man, I got to empower these people to go do the stuff. What a win that is. It's not about me getting the medals. I want them getting the medals. I want them getting the awards. I want them getting the applause. I want them to have the testimonies. Wow, did you hear about that? Or I'm the behind-the-scenes guy helping them, encouraging them, training them. Is it making sense? You've got to have the mentality of an overseas worker here in the States. You are the front man, but you've got to be putting your efforts and energy into your people that you're investing in. Now, that exercise I did with those guys, none of them knew what was going on. And I never talked to them about it, but I told Mitchell, and it was a clear way for me to figure out he was just needing some help on leadership. And I just said, you give me one day, and we can figure some people out. Whatever it is, but you have to figure out what you're looking for. For me, I told you we are a blue-collar church that really values character, that really values work ethic, that really values serving, that really values humility, that really values doing your part in the kingdom. And I've got to find a way to instill that and identify those people that already have that in them and then call others out, which I did. Some of these guys did the discipleship school a few years later, was able to disciple some of them, pull them in and say, hey, man, let's talk about this area. And it became a cyclical problem in their life. They kept skipping job to job. They kept getting bored with this. They kept thinking, if I can just do ministry, that'll fix everything. And I'm like, dude, you're going to be worse in ministry than you are at this job. Because you're lazy, because you don't commit, I was like, I'm not impressed. Don't think ministry is going to fix you, right? So you've got to start people early and help them on their journey. All right, the third thing is create. So you're going to identify, you're going to start early, you're going to create coaching opportunities. Create coaching opportunities. I'll just say this, great leaders know how to coach. And you have to learn it. Most players don't come in as coaches, they come in as players. But as you play the game long enough, you then figure out how to coach. And those coaches rise up. You think about 4-star and 5-star recruits in football, right? A lot of schools can recruit those guys, but it's developing them as the make or break. You have coaches that are great at recruiting, but not great at developing. And you have coaches that are great at recruiting and developing. The kind of coach you want to be is that one. You recruit and you develop. You identify, you pull people in, you start them early, and you're actually able to develop them. If you can just recruit people but can't keep them, you can't develop them, that's not going to take you very far. So you've got to have that kind of mentality as you're taking on these people that you can actually develop them. As you're creating coaching opportunities, I would encourage you to ask open-ended questions, right? Don't go after yes or no. I was talking to a guy just happened the other day, and he said, I've started asking this question, what does that mean? What does that mean? He just keeps asking, what does that mean? And what he's discovering is people are just going to a deeper level. They'll say, well, hey, I really care about this. And you say, really? Well, explain that. Why do you really care about that? Why? What does that mean? Why? You're trying to get to the core conviction level of a person, because once you get there in a leader, the light bulb goes off. Oh. It's like, why do you really care? And so what I will try to do is I will intentionally try to push them to get to that button of why do you really care? Because I want them to have a core conviction that's going to go beyond me meeting with them or this church body. What saddens me the most is when we have people leave our church and they flounder. That means we did not do them right, especially when they're a leader. That means we were too much of a crutch, we didn't empower them the right way, disciple them. I don't take responsibility for all the actions they do, but we've got to get the percentage up to where the majority of people leaving are actually thriving. And so that's something that bothers us. That's something that we talk about of like, okay, this has got to be sustainable for life. We've got to be depositing things they can carry with them wherever they go and whatever they're doing. Whether they have a great community or not, that they can go and start that, be agents of change. That's got to be our mentality because I want people to make it. So we've got to coach people in the right way. I love this quote I heard Bill Johnson say once. He said, when we bring on new staff, I tell them, I want you to get my vision and get underneath my vision before I listen to yours. And I thought that was great because the point is, if people are going to come on into your church, underneath your leadership, and they're not going to submit and get behind your vision, and they're just going to come because they want to have a role to really espouse their deal, that's not the right motive. They need to be able to submit and surrender to someone else. And then, once they've done that, all of a sudden, then, hey, let's hear what God has for you. If they're not willing to submit to your vision and show that place of trust and commitment, you don't want them around. And we have had so many examples of that, of people that have come to our church. Often, it's not your college students, young adults, it's your families that come and they say, hey, like we had this one family years ago, and they came to us and they just said, hey, we really have a desire for Antioch to really be this like place of prayer, to where we just commit this kind of 24/7 prayer deal. And I said, man, that's awesome. I love that vision. And over time, they began just to kind of share with different leaders, different people, and really want to do this and kind of stirring stuff up. And we had to have these conversations with them. And they said, hey, we want to come into Antioch and really start this ministry in Antioch, right? Which is kind of a common thing people think about. And they were a great couple. I mean, they love Jesus. They're honoring. They're great. They don't go to our church anymore or anything, but they moved on, and we're hearing these conversations with them. We had 3 or 4 meetings with them, and we're trying to understand, like, their heart is they want to start this deal, but we're not doing that deal, and we just can't see eye to eye. And they're like, I don't know why you wouldn't want to do this. And they're an older couple and very strong, very anointed, very gifted, and solid character. And we were praying before this kind of last meeting with them, and my wife got this prophetic picture of the Lord showing her these 2 different blueprints. And these 2 blueprints, and they were trying to go on top of each other. And the Lord said, I can't build 2 houses. Like, I can't do that. These are 2 separate houses. I cannot take 2 sets of blueprints and build 1 house. And it was this, oh, thank you, Holy Spirit. That is the greatest analogy ever for this meeting. So we walked in and said, hey, guys, we don't have a lot to say, but here's the deal. The Lord spoke to us and said, hey, there's 2 blueprints. Both houses are going to honor God. Both are going to serve and bless the city, the nations. But we can't build them on top of each other. And when they heard that, they're like, oh. And that was their cue to say, great, we need to move on. We blessed them, prayed for them, moved on, encouraged them over the years. They stayed in our city, started something, eventually moved on. But it was so releasing to come into a place of saying, hey, here's some people that we love. Some people that really are trying to empower. Some people that we've even tried to coach in different ways, even though they're much older than us and more mature than us. And at the end of the day, we left feeling really satisfied because we helped them get clarity on what they were being asked to do. And I would just say, when it comes to coaching people, you get to this stage, this is where, there's such a wide range of ways you can go about it. But I have found that begging is never an option as a coach. You don't ever need to beg your players to play. If you're doing that, you don't have the respect. You're not leading them. Jesus never begged, as far as I can tell. He didn't grovel. He didn't beg. He didn't, that's not him. What he did do is he called people up to a standard, and he called them up to a vision and a dream that people could run to. That was so much bigger than they ever could imagine. It kept them going. It kept the fires lit. So I would encourage you, as you coach people, remember, they've got to get your vision, serve, understand it, and then you can release them and say, now I want you to start dreaming. I do that with our leaders. We're in coaching them, whether it's official or unofficially. I'll oftentimes ask them, hey, what are you dreaming about lately? What are you dreaming about? And what I find is some people say, man, it's a good question. I haven't dreamed in a while. I said, man, you were born to dream. This is the time to dream now. And it makes something comes alive in them. When they hear from a leader, I'm releasing you to dream. I'm not releasing you to go off and do, I'm releasing you to dream because I want to be part of that dream with you. And how can I help you? When all of a sudden a leader says, you know what, I'm in the business of releasing people, you've got to release them to dream with the Lord first, and then you get into the physical releasing of them. That's when all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is who we are. We really are training and sending people. And when it all comes back to leadership, guys, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about being a people that actually are committed to training and sending people into our city, into the nations. That's us. The only way we can do this by developing leaders. You've got to train them up so that you can actually send them out. Okay. Whew. I think I'm going to pause there. Drew. Yes.
When you talk about not begging, my experience, we repeat this every week. My experience has been a lot of times the reason we get questioning is our own fear and insecurity.
Right.
And so I'm worried about what's going to happen if I have the hard conversation, if someone leaves, if whatever. What's that been like for you? What have you had to do internally so that you
Yeah.
can actually get to that point in conversation where you can be released?
Yeah. So,
Repeat that
so Drew's question is, when I talk about Jesus never begged and we don't beg as leaders, how do you go about that when you've been in a situation where maybe you're feeling tempted to actually beg, and maybe when you've been caught doing that, why are you doing that? And a lot of times he's right in saying that it's because of a place of just insecurity. And I would say for any of you guys, anyone streaming in, you've got to understand that you're only as good of a leader as secure as you are in God. If your security in God and your identity in Him starts wavering, everyone's going to feel it. You don't have to say it. You don't have to say, hey, I'm feeling insecure. They're going to be like, oh no, we read it all of your body, all of your eyes, all of your voice. You're shaking. You're not being confident. You're not being assertive. So maybe I didn't say this at the beginning. The number one thing in leadership is you taking care of yourself and God, and then all of a sudden what flows out of you is leadership. If you are getting confidence and security and wholeness, maintaining health and relationships, if you are keeping the fires lit, that's going to happen. It's just like you're the tree, the fruit's going to happen. All of a sudden you're going to say, wow, people are drawn to that. Right? Jesus didn't send out posters or flyers. Come follow me over in the hill. I've got something to say and I got some fish and bread for you. No, he didn't do that. Jesus did not go around begging, groveling, even advertising himself. Because he was such an amazing leader, it just happened. People were drawn to him. So I would say, if you find yourself scratching your head, man, how can we just get more people in the door? Or, why won't they do that? It's not a question of them, it's a question of you. It's whoa, I'm actually not someone people want to follow right now. The last meeting I had, I sat like this. Because that's real attractive, that's real exciting to connect with. No, it's the last time I preached, I was just nervous and whatever and just, discouraged. No. If your confidence is there in God and who you are, we tell the people, we say, look, the worst thing you can do is try to be someone you're not. I mean, that's really one of the worst things you can do. Try to be the husband you're not, try to be the son you're not, try to be the friend you're not, try to be the gifting you're not. You're not. I'm not a musician. I get that. I actually can sing pretty good, okay? But I can't play anything because I've never taken the time to learn. I probably could learn someday, but I probably never will. I can sing, and I sing to myself, and I sing in the shower, and I sing in church, and that's where I sing. But, I'm okay with that. There's never been a day I'm like, man, I really wish I could be up there leading worship. Just the people are so connected. That's never the deal. That's never the deal. And I would just say, for me personally, there is, before God, there's zero in me that's aspiring to this role. Just so you know. I don't want to be a senior pastor. But life's not about what I want to do, is it? Life's not about what you want to do. It's actually about what he wants you to do. I've told our church, I haven't done this official teaching yet, but I'm going to one day. The teaching's going to be titled, It's Not What You Want to Do, It's What You're Called to Do. And I would argue that throughout Scripture, the case can be made that almost everyone, let's call it 95%, so I give myself some error margin. 95% of all the characters and the people we see in the Bible that we see stories about, every one of them were called to something they didn't want to do. Jonah, who wants to be swallowed in a fish, go to Nineveh. Moses, who wants to take on Pharaoh and go to the desert? Joshua, Abraham, go down the list. David was content with the sheep, man. I mean, leave the guy alone. Now his life's being threatened, spears being thrown at him. I mean, Peter, he's content fishing. I mean, here we go. I mean, Jesus, he came willingly to sacrifice himself, to serve, but that, he is the example. He was called by the Father, sent to the earth, and did what was very painful and hard. Even in the last hours, is Lord, take this cup. Guys, I'm telling you, it's okay to have a passion for people. It's great, actually. It's great to have a desire to serve and to love people, but you cannot love ministry over Jesus. You cannot. We would say there's an idolatry of ministry, even with many people at our church. that we go after pretty severely, on my staff even. And I have those heart-to-hearts, and I say, dude, you better get rid of your idolatry of ministry or you're fired in a month. I've had those conversations, and I'm honest about it. I don't need people idolizing a role. We idolize him. And if he says sweep, I sweep. He says play. If he said to me, Tyler, become a worship leader, you better believe I'm dropping what I'm doing, and I'm getting on YouTube and learning, or I'm calling Brandon and other people and tell me something. Chords, GCD, let's go. Because it's not about my life. It's about him. He came to lay his life down, right? He didn't come to say, do you think I wanted to preach? Do you know that I was this close to failing at Blinn College in speech class freshman year? I nearly failed. You think I can talk a lot? I can now. Because I've trained myself. I've learned to talk. I study people. I go into meetings and I study them, how they talk, how they listen, what makes them laugh, what makes them tick, what makes them cry. My wife said years ago, she said when she married me, she started going to Tyler University, which means she actually studies me. She wants to know what I like, what I don't like, what I like to eat, what makes me tick, what encourages me, what makes you. She wants to learn. I've taken that from her. I go to university every day with people, all the time. I'm looking, what are they doing? Why are they doing that? Because my goal in life is actually to become better interacting with people so I can lead them to a place where God is leading me so we can actually get the work done. That's the goal. You know, it's like I was an introvert until 17 years old. I was an introvert that was actually very critical, very spiteful, very negative, didn't have any friends, by the way, and had horrible acne. It was horrible. It was rough. Never had girlfriends. It was brutal, you know? But like, God changed my heart in a moment on a mountainside looking over Lake Austin, and I said, God, I'm desperate. I don't know what I'm doing. And he said, Tyler, stop cursing people, start blessing them, and then your life will change. That was it. First time God ever spoke to me in my life. I would say, borderline audible voice, not really sure. That's all he said. If you'll stop cursing people and start blessing them, then I will give you friends and I will change your life. I was at 17 years old. Junior of high school, I went in pretending like I'd actually never met anybody, and I introduced myself to everyone at school again. I was the weirdest kid. Hey, how you doing? I'm Tyler. Yeah, I know, dude. We were in class last year. I know, just saying hey again. Hey, how you doing? I'm Sally. Hey, Sally, how you doing? I became a new person because God said you're going to change. Remember, your life is not your own. You're here today, you could be gone tomorrow. I'd much rather know that when I am gone, I stand before him and say, Lord, you called me to this. I was faithful to do it, obedient. Did I want to do it half the time? No. Do I want to preach half the time? I don't. You can ask my staff. They actually know the weeks when I'm not preaching because I'm like super giddy and loose and, you know. Preaching's hard for me. But God never said, do what's easy. Let's do what I've asked you to do. Does that make sense? Drew?
Yes.
I think it's it.
Okay, so we actually have at least one question from the stream. We'll get to
Great.
could you role play for a second with us? How would you have a conversation challenging someone to step up? So Sean Dunn looks like a very flaky college student. And let's say Sean he's a student and you see some potential in him, but he's the guy that's not saw in the wood, or he's
Yeah. Yes.
something there. How do you challenge him to step into something?
Yeah.
Take us into what that would look like.
Yeah, sure.
You can talk to him directly.
So, Sean, yeah, so just Drew's question is, you know, how do you approach someone that you think is a potential leader, but they're a little flaky, they're immature, they've got some things going on, you see it, but how do you kind of challenge them and raise the bar for them? You know, I think I mentioned this earlier, but just we've looked at it biblically and seen everything the scripture laid out and kind of came up with a summary of here's the bottom line standards on character, and here's the bottom line standards in just interacting with people. And so when we see someone, we say, hey man, there's so much potential in you, and I believe in you. But I want you to know these things in your life that actually you can do something about are hindering God using you to your full potential. So as long as you keep dabbling in that, you're going to stay here. And so the challenge we put out there is you can stay where you are, and that's fine. And you'll probably ho through your life. But if you actually want to do something that's going to impact others, that's going to change others, that's going to result in a multiplication type of impact in your life, whether it be for 10 or 1,000 or whatever, then these areas in your life have got to go. And so I'm not going to coddle you. I'm not here to hold your hand. You're an adult. Whether you're 18, you're 45, you're an adult. You can make these choices. I'm here for you and I will challenge you, but I want you to know there's a standard we're going to set, and I think you can reach it. So what I found is that we have to set a standard that's high. You have to believe in the person, really believe in them. This isn't lip service. This is like, no, I really do believe that there's gold in you that we're going to call out, but you haven't seen it yet, and there's places you're insecure, you've been wounded in, that's hindering you. And so I want to go there. So we set a standard, we believe in the person, and then what we do is then we talk about a mindset that oftentimes I've found is the issue. So not to go into depth, but a lot of guys I've met with that struggle with purity issues, with pornography, different things. A lot of times I go to them and I say, hey, you can make a choice right now. You can choose for that no longer to be a deal in your life, or you can choose to make excuses. What do you want to do? And sometimes they're like, I'm not ready to make that choice. Or they start giving me excuses. They say, okay, when you're ready to rid that of your life, I believe God can do it right here, and I'm here to walk you through with it. You believe in people and you back it up, put your money where your mouth is, which is you back it up in relationship. You back it up by calling them up. So I would just say, don't lower the bar for people, raise the bar. Believe in them, because a lot of people don't believe in themselves. I didn't believe in myself. I had to have like 100 words of people prophesying over me like, you're a leader, and I'm like, oh, no, I'm not, I mean, just people need to be believed in. When people are believed in, and when you speak truth in their lives and you raise the bar that is a kingdom bar, man, people rise to that. I would just say one last thing is I've coached baseball for a couple years, my boys, and I love doing this with kids. They'll go up, they strike out, shoulders slump, walk back. I'm like, hey, buddy, you struck out. Let's think about why you struck out. You swung too early. This happened. Just go up there and swing again. You can do it. Next time up, you're going to swing again. You're going to get a hit. I believe you can get a hit today. Goes up next time, strikes out again. I struck out again. Hey, it's okay, ma'am. I want you to keep swinging. I believe you. I've seen you hit in practice. I know it's in you to hit. The greatest joy in coaching baseball, little boys, is when that kid who keeps striking out actually gets a hit. You know how I know that? Because all the fans shout for him, even the opposing team. Everyone's like, yes, that guy got the hit. And he barely made it to first base or got thrown out, but at least he hit the ball, As a leader, that has to be a place of joy for you. Oh, he got it. He did it. Yes! That is the yes moment. That's the touchdown moment when the people get it. When the guy comes back 2 weeks later, he's like, man, I decided I'm done. I told my wife, I'm done, we're out, we're done, and I'm walking in purity, and I've actually done this and this. I'm like, yes, come on, man, you can do it. People just need to be believed in. The disciples need to be believed in. They weren't just giving instructions once and they said, all right, go your way. And Jesus helped them, coached them, got in their world, believed in them, so they could actually go change the world. Does it make sense? Great. Great.
And they're basically asking, what's the line of vulnerability as a leader? You don't want to be too vulnerable, perhaps, where you're just sharing what maybe should just be shared in your
Sure.
kind of accountability group, but you don't want to never share anything. They have this
Yeah.
picture of a perfect pastor. So what's the line there? How do you be vulnerable?
Yeah. I don't know who I got this from years ago, but somebody else, a lot smarter than me. They said in the realm of preaching, they said, make sure you preach your clean laundry, not your dirty laundry. Laundry is laundry, but it means that you've actually found some breakthrough, right? So if I'm preaching, I'm probably not sharing something that I am trying to find victory in per se, like as of last night, like Sunday, hey guys, I'm just in this messy place, but I know you guys love me. That's usually not helpful for everyone. You may think it's helpful, it's just not. But I can't say, hey, a year ago, this is where I was, and man, this is how God pulled me through, because you're preaching hope, right? I mean, everyone can just divulge all their whatever stories and their stuff. So you preach clean laundry, not dirty laundry, would be one thing. And then the other thing I would say is when it comes to just, being vulnerable is Ashley and I have taken the route of being very open and vulnerable with anyone. Now, our rule of thumb in our family is we are released to be as vulnerable as we want to about us individually, but in terms of us as a marriage, there's limits. Does it make sense? So she's not able to divulge things without me signing off on them if they're sensitive matters in our marriage. She can share whatever she wants to that affects her. Does it make sense? She's also way more open book than I am. I'm just more of a private person, by nature. I just kind of am in that way. So that's what we'd say. And then I would just say, with our people, we're just open and honest. I mean, our staff, I am serious with our staff, and I am playful with them, and I will get in their face, and I'll be the first one to celebrate their birthday. You just have to be the leader, and you have to be someone that's saying, you know what, if I'm going to ask you to go there, I'm going to go there too. Our life groups, we've oftentimes just kind of unleashed 10 minutes worth of just, hey, here's where we are. And they are blown away. They're like, I can't believe y'all just said that. And it's like, we did just say that because we love you guys. We want you to be part of this family. Does it make sense? So I would almost say it's pretty rare that we don't share something because we want to be open book. And at the same time, I'm not sharing, and I'm sharing things that are appropriate for the person. A 19-year-old college student need to share things in a way that versus a 35-year-old married man is just a difference, just like with a 6-year-old kid. You have to be smart enough to know what's going to be helpful for them. And again, when we share and when we are vulnerable, we're not being vulnerable and sharing for our sake, it's for theirs. So if what I'm sharing is going to be helpful, let's do that. If it's not helpful, I just need to get off my chest, that's the wrong environment. That's like your two bros you just unload on. Do you know what I'm saying? Or the Lord in your journal. You know, I mean, like, that's where that, like, unloading doesn't happen on just people. You're sharing things to help them and to set a precedent for them that, hey, you can be vulnerable too. Does it make sense? So, yeah.
What other questions? That could be So you talked about searching for character over gifting.
Mm-hmm.
What if you find someone who is like really gifted but doesn't have the character, but really wants to grow?
Yeah.
And because I think I sometimes find I want to look for character, not gifting, but I still see those people with gifting. And I'm like, ooh, there's so much inside of you, and I find it is harder to grow character than gifting.
Yeah.
But it also can be really fruitful.
Yes.
So what is that balance for you when you see that?
Yeah.
Like, wow, this is really attractive.
Yes.
And I'm not impressed, but I am kind of impressed.
Yeah, sure.
And I
Yes.
want
Yes.
to help you.
Yes. No, that's great. So, yes. So the question is, you know, when you talk about identifying leaders, you're trying to find leaders that actually have character. But what if, like, the gifting in a way is almost so great, it's outweighing the character? What do you do with them? And what I would say is what our approach has been, what we continue to do is we will take those people and we pull them close and we explain to them, hey, I see the gifting in your life. I see that God has gifted you. He's anointed you. I can see that. What I also see is there's some blind spots going in your life. And what I know is that because I love you, because I want you to make it for the long haul, not short term, I actually want us to sideline the gifting for a moment. And I want us to press into the heart. Let's actually turn our focus and attention into your heart. And let's get these things worked out. And as we do, whether it takes a month, 6 months, a year, let's work here, because I want you to know my goal and desire is to raise you up and release you. But as a good father, I can't do that with integrity if I think that you're not going to make it. I have to make sure that there's something stable and secure here. So that's how we approach it. We don't push them away, stiff arm them. We actually bring them close and say, hey, we've identified this. Let me walk with you through this, because I can see there's a desire. I can see there's a calling in your life. That's the calling and gift of God is irrevocable. It's on your life. But the character we've got to work on. But you've never had anyone really walk with you to work on that. So I'm intentionally going to do that. And as a loving parent, even though I could really use you right now because you are so gifted, I'm actually going to sacrifice that to help you for the long haul. We have a few couples like that in our church right now that are actually very gifted, are very called, that will be senior team leaders, senior church planners, pastors. They will be. I mean, they have it in them. But we're working on their marriages. We're working on their character. And if I sent them somewhere else, someone may say, wow, these guys are great. Why didn't you send them out earlier? They're gold. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. I'm trying for them to make it for the next 50 years. I'm not interested in a short-term run. And so we have sidelined people, but we haven't pushed them away. We've just, right, you're on the sideline, you still get coaching. You still get to be with the team. It's just you're not playing. And that's the mentality we have. You're on the team, bro. It's just, we're not going to put you out to play yet because you're not ready. But when you're ready, everybody look out. Does that make any sense? It is, again, it's all relational too. So, great question. Anything else?
All right, so let's just say you have a guy, college guy, young adult guy. You have an hour with him. Hey, can I get time with you?
Yeah.
You got an hour every week for a month. What are you trying to do in that hour? What's your
Yeah.
balance of relationship versus, like, I've got to be really intentional?
Yes.
Just what's it look like?
Yeah. So if I had 4 meetings with someone for an hour, the first meeting is just, we're just going back down history lane. First meeting is, hey, bro, let me tell you a little bit about my life for the first 30 minutes, and you're telling me about yours. And what I do is I try to model for them what I'm trying to get out of them, which is, hey, I'm going to go back to the baby years and to my family structure. What was it like growing up? Where am I in the birth order? What's the mom and dad situation like that? Is there mom and dad? What were my journeys? What were my highs and lows through high school, through middle school? What were big marking points for me, things that got me? What really sparked my interest in Jesus? What really got me going? How did I get to here? What are some bumps and bruises I had along the way? And what are victories? I'm trying to show them my life is full of failures and successes. My life is not peachy, but there's some high moments, there's some low moments. And by the way, I want you to know where I'm coming from, which is, hey, this is my family structure. So that may or may not be relatable to you, but I'm kind of showing you my cards right here, right now, so that at least it takes down any barriers you may have to me, Mr. College student. So the next 30 minutes when you share, you actually may even go it up a notch. Because you now know I'm not here to judge you. I just told you my life. And then I'm asking you to say, hey, man, so tell me about your childhood. What are some big pieces of your story that God's done in your life? And kind of how do we end up at this table? That's kind of how I would ask it. If I can get them to share, and I help them along by asking questions, and I probe. But I have to start the meeting by exposing myself, or else they don't really know where we're going. You set the tone. You set the standard as the leader, which is, this is the kind of conversation this is. So that's what I do meeting 1, and then meeting 2, 3, and 4. After meeting 1, after I get the intel based off of where they're coming from, then you pray and you just kind of come up with the notes of just, okay, this is where we need to go with this guy. Because I'm not interested. If I've got a one-on-one like that, I'm not just going to go through some like systematic thing. Although there is a place for that, but not early on. Early on, you're trying to connect and you're building trust and relationship. Coaching phase, hey, we're taking you through 10 key leadership things. Yes, like you guys are going to go through these boom, 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 boom. But you've already gone through that gauntlet, right? But for them, you're trying to win them over to Jesus. You're trying to win their hearts. You're trying to get a place to speak in their life and hopefully try to figure out where are they in the kingdom of God? Where do they need help on? And if they share in their story, hey, my dad was never around. Great. Next week, we're talking about the Father heart of God and just what's my journey been like? And man, let's probe there. And I got some scriptures and I want to share some stories and maybe there's a resource. And man, it's like, and then I go after and I say, okay, week 2, 3, and 4, we're trying to get breakthrough on one thing a week. And that's my hope. And if at the end of that, he's like, wow, I started here. I experienced breakthrough. I gained a friend. There's trust there. I want more. Great. Now there's a place for more. But we went after some places that need healing, right? Someone shared with me even at our team leader gathering, they said, remember, a lot of times people need healing before they need training. And so you've got to make sure there's healing there before you start training them. Oftentimes we miss that step because it takes long. Healing takes a while. It's not just like 5 minutes later, you good there? All the wounding? Okay, great. Let's move on to the next thing. And that's my mentality. I want to move on to the training thing. But that's not how people work. And I've got people that are loyal in our church, but it's taken 5+ years of lots of things, from doing their weddings to their marriage counseling that was on the rocks to doing the D school. I mean, there's a lot of investment put in where I can now go to them and say, hey, dude, I want you to go to Timbuktu. They're like, great, we're gone. But that's taken 5 years of pouring our hearts out to gain trust and loyalty where they know I had their best interest in mind. They know I would never say Timbuktu unless we've prayed about it, we've talked through it, we think it's the right move, it's the most impactful place for them to go in the world, boom. And they're like, great. They may ask some questions, but they're like, they're in. That's what you're trying to get to as a leader. You're trying to get the loyalty and the trust of sons and daughters to say, Dad, where do you want us to go? Does that make any sense? And I just want to honor Jimmy. That's what he's done. Jimmy has built an army of sons and daughters. So one little nugget, I would say I would encourage you guys in the future to hire sons and daughters, not brothers and sisters. Brothers and sisters just take a little more work. Sons and daughters, they're your sons and daughters. You were there. You were part of this journey. You helped develop me. I'm with you. That you have their trust and their loyalty and their respect. Peers, I don't know, I can maybe be doing this better than you. Hey, bro, we were both there at the same time. Remember that? I have some peers with me on my staff, but it's unique situations. So that's not a principle or standard. I'm just giving it a little advice of sons and daughters are a lot of times more enjoyable than peers when you talk about leadership and staffing. Leave it at that. Sound good? Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
When you're leading in a structure that has leaders set up who are leading other people, so like you're a shepherd of your entire church, but you
Right.
have people as your life group leaders, how are you determining, and other than the leadership of the Holy Spirit, how are you determining where your investment goes
Right.
as far as into the leaders who are leading the bulk of your people or into those people themselves? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, I think I would probably look at two main factors, which is I invest in people based off of hunger and fruit a lot of times. Someone can even have great potential, but if they're not really hungry to listen and learn, you're wasting your time. But if they're showing some ounce of hunger, of like, man, I'm really hungry, and that just comes by them, you watch them, right? I'm a people watcher. I wasn't good with people, so I had to watch how people interacted, and so I've learned, You just watch. You just watch people and like, who's really hungry? Who's like when someone's sharing something with them, how much are they listening? You know what it is when you're talking to someone, and they're giving you the like, yeah, versus, wait, say that again? That's hunger. It's like, I got lunch, I can't wait for this conversation to be over. Or this is nice, can we take a selfie, but I'll move on. No, this is, like hunger is like someone comes to the meeting and they have 5 bullet points they want to discuss with you. They're serious. They're like, no, your time is valuable, and they want to value it, and they want to honor it, and they're here. The other guy's like, I'm sorry I'm late, kind of. Then it's like, okay, we're done. It's just, hunger is a real deal. I think Jesus looks at hunger, and so that's what we look at. And then fruit. If a life group leader is really being fruitful, you're seeing discipleship happening, you're hearing about miracles and testimonies, and people are thriving, new people are coming and going, there's a lot of life there. You're like, hey, something's there. Let's go hang out with that guy. What's going on with that guy? I mean, that's how we peg them. Usually, leaders self-identify themselves not by raising their hand, but by the fruit of their life. You just got to be looking. You got to be watching. So you got to be watching your people, getting your ear to the ground, doing surveys, understanding things. Hey, so we started doing surveys of life groups. And hey, so where were you guys here? And we start tracking them, life group reports, and you really track those things. You actually can see, wow, this is the same 12 people for the last 12 months. That's interesting. They're a little stagnant. Let's go get in there and help them to motivate them. We did that recently with the family life group, and they're on fire because they just need a little kick. It's like, oh man, this is what we're made for. That's right, we got too cozy. We're reaching out now. They're going to the park. They're doing stuff, and it's like exciting again. But so it can be people that are maybe even a little comfy, but typically I look at hunger and at fruitfulness in someone's life. Great question.
All right. Hey, awesome. That is gold. And thank you, Tyler, so much. Hey, I want to just restate a couple things, especially if you're in the leadership track, but really this applies to everybody. The reason we're doing this, and for those who don't know about the U.S. leadership track, it's people that are doing ministry, and then they're being trained while they're doing, because we think what Tyler just shared, there is so much richness in that, and the power of it is not you hearing it, but you applying it, right? And that's how we have this set up is, there's a lot out there on leadership, but what I love about Tyler is he is living this, and he's probably driving and leaving here to go apply what he just taught us. And you're living it too. And we're proactively asking you, we want you to be in ministry situations where you are having to live this kind of stuff. So I really want to challenge everybody, but especially those in the leadership track. I want you to take at least 1 or 2 things that he shared with you and apply that in the next couple of weeks. And even be prepared, in the next couple of weeks to be able to talk about, so what are you learning? What are you experiencing? What are you seeing? I can just say from my years of doing ministry, there was a lot of things that, it is gold, some of these things that he shared. And I think, 10, 15 years from now, you'll be able to look back and recognize, I got it kind of, but wow, I wish I had been able to clue in on that more. Part of that's just life experience. There's no way to avoid that. But as best we possibly can, let's learn from the wisdom and what God is imparting to us. In particular, something I want to highlight is that whole deal on security. I have found, looking at leaders, if I had to pinpoint like a make or break, besides you loving Jesus deeply in your heart, the extent to which you're secure in God is the extent to which you can lead. And I just cannot say that enough. I have seen highly gifted, competent people that just that fundamental insecurity just completely, whether or not it sabotages everything or at least holds them back or takes the joy out of ministry. But at the end of the day, it's people that are confident in their own skin before God are the ones that other people follow, even if you're not as gifted. I think in some levels, it's the person who has a rich walk with God and is secure will end up being the last person standing just because ultimately they don't need the people they're leading to be somebody. And I think so much of what Tyler's talking about is he's free to have these kind of conversations. He's free to raise people up because he's not threatened by any of it. It's like, okay, she had a hard word with somebody because that's what they needed, and so be it. If our life group shrinks or they leave or they're mad or whatever, they write a blog article about me because I don't need them to be somebody. I am somebody, so I can help them. that I cannot overstate how big of a deal that is. So I think for all of us, I really want to challenge, apply some of the practical things he shared, but also take that thought, meditate on it before God. I would say most of us in this room, we are not there. We are still in a journey, and I think Tyler would probably say he's still in. That is a lifelong pursuit of me finding my identity in God, not in what I do, and just being okay. And the more God calls you into leadership, the harder that is. That's the challenge. So start now. Don't wait till you're in the middle of leading a church and you have 500 people looking at you to start working on that one. Start today. Start in your own life group. Start in your own ministry. And not to make this a whole separate teaching, but clue in on even, I think a few things that I find are like my dashboard is if I'm really frustrated about something, ask the question, why am I frustrated? Is it because I care so much about the people in the ministry and I'm frustrated because I feel like we're hurting people? Okay, that's fair. More often than not, I'm frustrated because it's some goal of mine is being blocked. I'm not getting the opportunity that I want to have, or things aren't working out the way I want them to. That's a great sign. So next time you feel frustrated about something in ministry, I want to challenge you to pause and ask yourself why, and really let God dive into your heart. I would be willing to bet you money, even though we don't gamble. I'll still bet you some money that more often than not, it's something inside of you, even if there's some external stuff that's also legitimately frustrating. Secondly, jealousy is a great sign. When you see other people thriving in ministry, is your first thought, praise God, that's amazing? Of course, that's what you're going to say out loud. In your heart, is that your first thought? Or do you feel threatened by that? And then third is fear. Fear is a great indication. If I walk around kind of this pit in my stomach, what's going to happen? Why are you feeling that way? And again, more often than not, it's because I'm viewing what's going to happen as an indictment of me. It's like, I'm so fearful of how this life group situation is going to work out. Why are you so fearful about that? It's right to be concerned and grieve people when they're making bad decisions, but is it because you're placing your identity on how things work out? Or is it because you just love those people and you care about them? So those are great. Those are at least ones for me. I don't know. Tyler could have some more to add, but if you have those, rather than just kind of pushing through, I think what most of us do is we project externally when we feel that way. And I don't doubt any one of us in this room or on this stream, you could come up with great reasons that are very spiritual sounding. I may not even be able to tell the difference if you're feeling that way, of why you're feeling that way. Only you and God know what's really going on inside of you. But I just want to challenge you, deal with that stuff now and make that a lifestyle of dealing with that stuff, because that's what frees you up to ultimately lead people later. Amen? All right, Tyler, thank you so much. Such a gift, such a great teaching. And for those in the leadership track, remember December, we are not meeting, but we'll be doing phone calls either with me or someone where you are locally, just talking through where things are at with you. And for the rest of you guys, you're always welcome to come join us. It's the last Thursday of every month. Sometimes we stream in from other places. Sometimes we have a live teaching here, topics like this, and hope